Angry Blackman. Educator. Let's talk about it.
Are we spoiling? Do we need to do a spoiler alert?
We always have to do a spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
We have the spoiler right here. If you don't want to know about One Angry before you've seen One Angry on all the streaming, it's not all the streaming.
It's not.
It's
Amazon. Well, except for it said Amazon,
but it's on your video on demand.
It's on demand.
And Apple.
Somebody had said yesterday, I went to look on Amazon and I couldn't find it. And I had looked on Amazon as well, but I couldn't find it, and I thought it was just because we were outside of the country. It's not.
Just go buy it on the iTunes.
It's on iTunes.
Right?
It's on demand. I'm trying to find the list of places you can
always
buy
rent it. On your on demand.
I'm gonna get the list. I'll send it to you.
I don't send it to me. I don't need it. I've seen it. So, what did you think about One Angry Blackman?
Here we go.
Good. Tell the people.
Felt more like a scripted documentary than a movie.
Why?
Well, mainly because they had the documentary thing of person talking, and then it cut to like a picture of who they were talking about or the book or whatever they were.
At some point, I dared to think of Blackish.
Yeah.
It kind of had that feeling
bit.
a little bit at the throughout, and it was that thing where we're gonna mention Martin Luther King, and then now we're showing pictures of Martin Luther King or whatever, or we're gonna talk about Zora, and then boom, now we're seeing photos of Zora, and that's where the documentary feeling. It felt like a Ken Burns type thing.
Yeah, but it's scripted. What they were saying was scripted.
I get that. What else you think?
Thought it was gonna be much longer than it was.
You wanted more?
Well, I thought they were gonna. I had no expectations going into this. I didn't listen to any of the podcasts, so.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this thing for
2 years.
Yeah. So I thought they were gonna like.
I know all about the movie making.
I thought they were gonna like go places, and it was gonna, something else. It was gonna happen. Felt like there wasn't much closure for what happened to Michael and his feelings and that weird sort of isolation thing. I get the being isolated. I understood that, and being like frustrated and like alone. I got that. But it ended very abruptly. And it almost felt like you were seeing what was in his head, and everybody was reacting to all the sounds in his head, but it wasn't real. I don't know. The ending was a little weird to me.
Go ahead. You had a different reaction. You were reacting to stuff in there that I wasn't.
Well, because one of the characters is the mother of a brown child. And
yeah, she got on my nerves. As the character. The actress.
I really connected with her because I have the same fears.
Like I said, she got on my nerves.
Do I get on your nerves?
I have heard that thing that all of what she said is. It was one of the, I mean, it just. It's like, yeah, lady, we get it. You're trying to understand a culture that you're not from, and you're really not inside of yet. Because that's what it felt like. She was still outside of black culture.
Well, her
her
son was not black though. He was Brazilian.
I know, but she's in America. She's not going to have Brazilian culture.
No.
And she was outside of the culture and she was trying to understand the culture by being in this African American lit class.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know what? You take your ass home. You can read at home. There's libraries. You being in this class, giving your 2 cents is irrelevant. It's irrelevant to everything that's going on. But that's something that I would have felt if I was sitting in that class.
But you would have said it to her in that class.
No, I wouldn't have said shit to her.
You don't think so?
I've heard this so many times. You want to be angry? Oh yeah, I'd have been angry. Because I'd have been like, man, shut the fuck up. Don't nobody care about you and how you feel. You know, I mean, I guess this is something that happens in lit classes.
Yeah.
And maybe sociology type classes. Any of these classes where people are having to examine themselves as well as examine the stuff
text.
that the text that they're dealing with at the moment, and they put too much into trying to think about how it makes them feel and all this other shut the fuck
And what
up.
they were trying
You're
to
not
convey.
understanding the guy who wrote it,
Right.
or the woman who wrote
Right.
it. You're not understanding their thing. You're trying to identify and feel
And I
and
think-
all this stuff. It's like, you know what? It wasn't for you.
Yes. When they were talking about Zora, and the mom was talking about how she just thought it was so beautiful, and
Yeah, see?
and
That just
I've
gets under
read
my
Zora.
skin. Even as a teacher, it gets under my skin.
I've read Zora, but when I read something like that, I'm not trying to put myself in it. I'm not trying to connect in a way that wasn't meant for me as a reader.
It's like me, Liz, reading Maya.
I love Maya.
Yeah, but it's not about love. Reading Maya. And you're getting Maya's ideas about Maya.
Yes.
And her life.
Yes.
And what she's gone through. Or her voice through the characters
Yep.
that she has in her thing, if it's fiction. When I'm reading it, I'm not putting myself anywhere in there, but I do see maybe other people in my life that could explain maybe that's why they feel XYZ, because this is what what they've gone through is similar.
Yes.
And okay, fine. But I'm not ever inserting myself into Maya's story, into her reality.
Right.
Her reality, she's giving it to me through the text. I'm not diving in and becoming part of that text.
No.
And I guess it's easier if you're a man
Right.
reading a woman's text, like when I read Zora, or you read Tony, or whatever.
Right.
Same thing. You're always able to have a separation. But when I read Richard Wright, I didn't do that either.
Yeah.
When he talks about killing the cat, I don't have a connection to that.
Right.
I didn't feel that way or whatever. When you read other people and how they felt and the anger and angst and whatever, I've never dove in. I might be able to identify, I might be able to understand, I might know people that fit that, but I guess it's this idea of putting yourself into the text.
Right.
And I don't think that's a good way to
You wouldn't do that with Julius Caesar.
to analyze a text.
Right.
Right, you wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it with
But see,
Shakespeare.
but some of those things are so distant.
Right.
They're so distant for everybody. Like there's nothing about that is culturally relevant. Whereas when you're reading Maya and Tony, these stories are literally of our time. So then all of a sudden, yeah, you kind of could be like, that's my uncle, or
Right.
that's my aunt, and
Yeah.
you could kind of do
Yeah.
that. But I don't know. Whenever I've had black or African American lit classes, they're called, but I've had black literature classes where white folks were in that class, and you couldn't even have. And this is what I said to Hans. It's the kind of class I always wanted to have at Tuskegee. Never had it. But it's also the kind of class that I really wanted to have at white universities that I went to because you could never be honest in those classes. You're always, and Eddie says it in there.
Right.
He says, you know, if these people were not here, I would have never told you this.
Right, I wouldn't have been able to say this.
But that's the problem in those classes.
Yeah.
Black folks usually are doing in black lit classes exactly what they were doing when they were arguing about some guy coming to the campus. They're sitting over in the corner playing tic-tac-toe.
Right.
It's like
watching
that's
them,
exactly what I would do when I was in those classes because they're talking all this bullshit and they're never getting to the text. And it's just like, yeah, okay.
Well,
you're just doing other things.
As I'm watching this, I'm waiting. I know it's coming. I know they're going to say, hey, what do you guys think? Weren't you pissed off too? And when they said, don't bring us into your shit, this doesn't concern us. It has nothing to do with us. You just want us to co-sign your bullshit. I was waiting for that.
That's kind of the liberal thing.
Yeah.
And he's right about that. Liberals do that all the time. It's like, you know, we're not part of the conversation, but then all of a sudden you want us to agree with your side. And that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's kind of what liberals have done since Democrats have been trying to get more votes by bringing in minorities into the Democratic Party. All right. So, what do you guys have any other thoughts about the film?
I think the reflections
about the characters in the film, not the filming of the film. I'll talk about that in a minute.
The reflections at the end when Kendra made the statement about not being black enough for the black community and being too black for the white community, and that she didn't think her parents thought about that before having her, and how she didn't fit in. It made me wonder if our children felt the same. Like, do they think that we didn't make a conscious decision knowing that they would have the same, they would be straddling that same line. They would be too black for the white side of the family and too white for the black side of the family. So?
No, I imagine you thought of it, but you can't. There's no possible way for you to talk to every single person we're going to encounter and make sure that's not going to happen.
I don't know that we wanted it to not happen. I don't know that that was...
But you weren't going to change it. It was just, this is who the child is going to be. We're not going to be able to change their experience.
We could have made a choice not to have children.
Okay, fine, but...
I won't have children now.
Shut up.
Fine, but, you know...
Do you relate to Kendra?
Yeah. I was always the weird kid who was left out.
Why?
What are you talking about? Who are you left out of?
School stuff?
What are you talking about?
Children in school.
Who are you left out of? You didn't answer the question.
No, participating in things. Kids playing over there and being able to relate to you and, you know, being included in activities and stuff.
When were you excluded?
Oh, he
when
was.
When it was children doing it, not when it was the teachers organizing it, because, you know, teachers want to bring everybody together, so...
I remember there was a time you were in second grade.
Like on the playground and stuff.
And you came out at the end of the day, and you were pissed because some boys in your class kept calling you white. And you kept telling them that your dad was black, which means you're black. And the boys were like, no, your mom's white. We know your mom. You're white. And you were furious that they were doubting that your dad was black. And it wasn't until Daddy was in your classroom substituting, and you're like, this is my dad, that the kids then actually started to treat you differently.
Yeah.
But you were pissed. And because they wouldn't believe that you were black. Is that Did that happen all the time, or just that one little?
Yeah, that happened all the time. Because I wasn't around, I didn't have the same situation, so I wasn't, you know, we weren't really poor in the ghetto, or
Yeah, we were.
We were. He just didn't know it.
It wasn't.
Yes, we
Yes,
was.
we were.
Yes, we is.
It was different. We were in a different place.
We
So,
weren't.
We were around different people. It was a different thing. I don't know.
Actually, it wasn't.
I don't know.
You lived in the hood.
Uh-huh.
Okay, then I was made to think
And
that I wasn't.
had no money.
We had no money.
Then I was made to think that we weren't.
No.
Yes.
No. You weren't made to think anything. What you're describing is what I've always said. Poor people with middle class mindset.
Yep.
We did what we did because we thought a certain way. We didn't think like poor people think. So then we didn't do what poor people do. Now, we didn't have the means to do all the things that we necessarily wanted to do, but when we did something, it wasn't the choice, the set of choices were different. Like, we have a couple days that we can go do something. What do you want to do? Well, we could do this that everybody around us is doing, or we could go and do this other thing.
Uh-huh.
Do we have enough money to go do that thing? Sure, we could go do it. Are we gonna be able to still pay the rent? Yeah, we can still pay the rent. Okay, let's go do that thing. But that choice was not on the table for everybody around us. They never thought to do that thing. Like go to the beach in Grand Haven or
Right.
something.
Or let your kids take piano classes. Some of the things that you did, piano classes and martial arts and ballet and all these things that you did, they're really expensive. But I knew that there were ways for you to get these things that were for free or for practically nothing. And so I found
We took advantage
we took advantage of the
those
resources. You went to the community center to take these classes.
Like ballet.
Well, that was the Grand Rapids Ballet offers free classes for boys.
Exactly.
So you went there for free. Our martial arts teacher, we became friends with her, and we ended up doing a bartering system. So that's how we paid for your classes. I would keep the boys, or she would use the Netflix or something that we could do where we didn't actually have to exchange money, but you were still getting the lessons. And that's
making a choice based on having limited funds
right.
and resources.
We were poor.
Oh yeah.
Hell, we make less money now than we did then.
It's current.
It's current.
It's a thing that's happening right now. All right, so.
But you also lived in a household with both parents.
Okay, how did we get to this from One Angry?
Because I'm asking if he identified with Kendra.
Huh?
He asked if he identified with Kendra.
Yeah.
Because Kendra's statement made me wonder if that's how our children felt.
Okay, but. Sorry, but I don't see, at least the character in the film, there was no reason to ever think of her or treat her as anything but black.
Right, she didn't look biracial.
It didn't matter.
There was nothing that
maybe,
said biracial.
and maybe that's a casting thing, but it never occurred that, like, Eddie, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
with her, it never did, and it was just like, it seemed more like you have an internal struggle that basically nobody else is struggling with when it comes to her, because she only looks one way. She only looks like one thing. I didn't buy her struggle.
Other than that, then like what she said, yes.
Right.
But the way she looked, I don't.
It looked to me like she was just, sorry people, she was just Negro. 100% Negro. That's what she looked like to me. Alright,
It was funny because you said after watching that, it was just like watching Menelik rant to himself around the table.
Yes. So Menelik, as the writer and director of this film, Menelik Lumumba, I've been hearing their podcast, Back to the Theater podcast. I've been hearing that podcast for what, 3 years now? No. I've been hearing them talk about the film for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
But we've been listening to it for longer than that.
Yeah, like 27.
We started listening to them back in China when we...
Yeah. They inspired us to do this podcast.
And it's interesting knowing some of the backstory of maybe some of the choices that they made and things, because I thought it was interesting in the shooting of the film, thinking about Mr. Hans Charles, and how there were shots that would have been transitioned into something else that the transition never came.
Like,
did you notice that?
Across someone's head.
And their head is still blocking the person.
Expecting it to be a hidden cut there, and it just kept going. It's like, oh,
yeah,
interesting.
It felt in a lot of ways like you were a person walking around the table, and then walking around the table almost the whole time they're having class, and you are just taking in and observing their conversation. And when someone would start talking, you may or may not choose to look at them, look directly at them. They're in your field of view, but you don't necessarily have to turn all the way and put them in the middle. And I noticed that a lot, where you're just kind of moving around. You're around the table. Somebody over here starts talking, and the camera kind of went around and then kind of put them in the field of view without ever getting all the way. So you still saw everybody, their reactions to what that person was saying, as well as the person. And it was kind of that weird thing. But the fact that the camera was low put you at...
It was almost...
like you're a little kid walking around, because they're all sitting. So you're like kind of like moving around, hearing the whole thing. But when you got behind somebody, you were actually behind them, and there was no seeing what that other person on the opposite side was saying. But you could hear them the whole time. It was kind of interesting.
It wasn't super cutty, because in a normal movie, you have...
This is an abnormal movie?
For me.
Abnormal.
Yes. It was different than any other movie I've seen. Mommy starts talking and it cuts to her, and you start talking, and then it cuts back to you, and it keeps doing that back and forth. Or then it cuts to a wide shot where both of you are talking, and it's very choppy like that. And like you said, it felt like you were in the room.
You said something about the length, how long it felt. Did it feel shorter because you were just having this conversation that was just running with a couple breaks, which would be in a classroom?
Right.
But because of the way everything was moving, it never felt like... It didn't feel long. Even though the conversation was, I would say, probably very dense for a lot of people. And like...
Really? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lit class, a black lit class. And
Listen,
all of the stuff that they were bringing up about the literature that they had been reading. I'm sorry, but that's a class that I would say most people in America have never seen before.
I live with you.
Well,
so for me, that was a normal everyday conversation.
Yeah.
They don't. But I would, and I said this to my aunt. Most people do not have that experience.
Yeah.
One, being a black lit class. Two, being a black lit class at a white school.
Right.
And then to have the freedom to say exactly how they thought and felt, not only about the subject matter, but about themselves. That is not a thing that happens very often.
No.
Usually people are just in their corners the whole time. They're not expressing themselves, and then they're talking. They're the teacher is doing most of the talking, trying to get students to react to something, and somebody might say something and people go, and then they move on
Right.
to some other aspect of the text. It's not diving into interpersonal relationships and, you know, the ideas of the individuals and how they think and feel, and
Excuse me.
really getting into the nitty-gritty of how this thing made them feel, which I don't necessarily buy all that much, because honestly it's not a psych class. You know, I don't really care about all of your feelings as a student, but that's a whole other thing. But it never really felt long.
No, and it's
Like it kind of
an
felt
hour
like
and a
they
half
wanted
long,
to keep
but
it. I wanted more of the conversation about literature. Like when she gets to a point and she says, we'll have to move Langston.
No, not Langston.
Was it Langston Hughes?
No, it was Ellison, I think. No, it wasn't Langston Hughes. It wasn't Hughes. I promise you. You're gonna make me look it up.
Yep. But anyway, they had to move him to the next class. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Let's keep this going.
Right,
You
that's
know?
what I thought too, but I live with you.
So, I'm thinking this could be because, you know, honestly, this was a thing that they did later on after, I think, the first couple seasons of A Different World, where we got to go into the classroom and hear the stuff that they were arguing and talking about in class, and then see them go into their real life outside
Yeah,
of class,
yeah.
still reacting to
Yeah.
what they had done, because that's college, that's university. That would be really interesting to have One Angry as a series.
Yeah, I sort of expected them to leave the classroom or
Well, see, that's just
like
it.
go home or, you know, go somewhere. not
Go
just-
back to the
See,
coffee shop
I-
and have
outside
further
and-
conversation.
I didn't have that expectation because I knew the backstory of that, and I knew the 12 Angry Men thing, and so I knew that wasn't going to happen. So if you get into the 12 Angry Men and watch that film, you will see exactly what you saw essentially in One Angry, where you have this ensemble cast sitting in one space and the conversation is bouncing like a ping pong ball back and forth between all these different people about a thing. You should watch 12 Angry Men. And you should watch 12 Angry Men if you haven't watched it or read it. Because 12 Angry Men, that idea of the debate between the characters and you learning about the character through the debate that they're having about something. I won't tell you what that something is in 12 Angry Men, but you should watch it because it's very similar to what we see in One Angry. They're just using the texts.
I don't have a list of the only authors I can find are Baldwin, Zora, and August Wilson. But I don't remember the last one that they had to move.
I thought it was Langston.
No, it was not. Because I would have been pissed if they stopped there.
Y'all go and find out. Who was it? You don't have to ask. You watch the film. We
not
own it.
It's not like we're not gonna
We
watch
bought
it
it.
again.
We got it. You can watch it anytime you want.
Paid all that money for it.
All that money.
Better watch that movie over and over again.
Hell yeah, get your money's worth. Hey man, big money, man. We were one of the. Hey, We backed it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We wanted to see it. We wanted it to get made.
On the Indiegogo.
We backed it.
And
You didn't back it.
we continue to promote it.
Free promotion from the Traveling Farrs and all its ancillary parts. Right? Right? Oh, that you haven't backed it. You haven't told your friends about it to see One Angry?
Yeah, friends, because I have those.
You got the Facebooks. You got the Instagrams. You have followers. Well, maybe you should try. Alright, anything else about One Angry we need to talk about? I still think it should be a series. 100%.
Oh,
It
yeah,
should
that'd
be
be awesome.
a series. I think it's kind of what could be in Dear White People. It could be much better than Grownish in actually dealing with literature. I like the idea of the dealing with literature, because if you just did a semester of those kids sitting there having these conversations and maybe then taking them, like you said, outside of the classroom and still dealing with, like you do at university, the ideas and your actual life, that would be really fun to watch. But I don't know if there's an appetite out there for the density of the ideas and the way their conversations went, because basically I would think a lot of people are going to have a hard time dealing with academic analysis of texts, because most people don't do that. Even college people don't do that very well. They tend to shy away from. There's a group of people that shy away from lit classes,
Right?
you know, because they're forced to have to do that, and they're like, you know, no, I can't. And I think one or two of the guys in that class were sort of like that. Like,
Yep.
they were really quiet most of the time.
Yeah.
You know, because it's
just-
difficult. It's difficult for a lot of people.
I wondered why they were even there.
Well, they were representative of people just like them. And one of them says it in his reflection. You know, I wish I kind of knew more, and I wish I kind of understood more, because they get more out of this than I do. But he's benefiting from their back and forth, their conversation.
They get more out of it faster than I do, and
exactly.
it takes me twice the time, and then I'm confused.
But everything seems so obvious, like, oh my God, that's exactly right. Well, I mean, that's lit. That's being in a lit class. You know, and inside of lit classes, you have to have that diversity of thought. All right. What else we got?
Are we doing a game chat? 'Cause I've got stuff.
We can do a short game chat.
Do you want to do one of the things in here?
No, we don't need to. Go check out the game chat
Then I don't.
on the YouTubes.
I don't have anything for this podcast.
If you want to find the Traveling Farrs, you can find us on the YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere the good podcasts are sold at the Traveling Farrs. FYI, podcasts are free. If you want to see us on the Instagram or the Twitters, we are Traveling Farrs. If you like the email, travelingfars@gmail.com, and the blog space where this podcast goes, the travelingfars.blueberry.net. No E's in the
And don't forget to check out
no
our
E's in the
Patreon.
Blueberry. And then you can look down there at the... Say it!
The Patreon.
The Patreon down there. Okay.
Patreon.com/thetravellingfars.
Yeah, man. Send us money.
Give us your money.
Give us all the money. All the money.
Give
I
us
love all the money.
Give us all the monies that you have, and we'll make.
Because we're moving.
And we'll keep making stuff.
We're moving, and we need the money.
And
We're moving, and we're going to have to get more stuff.
And we'll shout you out if you give us money.
We will put you in here. I will start putting up credits.
She will.
Maybe
throw
we'll
your
do
business
maybe
in the
we'll do a
street.
scroll, and we'll just have the names going up through that thing.
I will throw the business.
She'll
in the
throw
street.
your business in the street.
Karen
you like to
is
throw
very
business in
good
the street.
at
You
putting
like doing
people's business in the street.
And I'll spoil anything you got going on.
in every movie.
Yeah, and
And-
that you haven't seen
Right.
yet.
The spoiler will spoil it
Yeah.
for you. All right. That's it. That's it. That's it. You got that. Say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people.
Peace.